back working on our Centipede game, and this is part 4. You'll notice I've added some comments here in our index file, but that's really the only change I've made, so no need for you to make any adjustments. We're not adding any new files, but in this part we're adding several features. So first we're adding several features. Better fix my typo there. First, we're adding some information to the game screen. So we're going to put the score, the level, and the number of lives remaining. And then the next thing we're going to do is start to introduce some collisions. We will work on the collision between the player and the centipede. So every time the centipede hits the player loses a life. And then once we implement that, we can implement a game over scene when the player has no lives remaining. So that will be our goal for this part. And we'll see if we can make this video a little shorter than the ones we've had in the past. Okay, so we'll start. Let me show you what we're going to try and achieve first, and then this is the completed part 4. You'll notice I have the blue score, level, and lives at the top. I've shifted my centipede down so it doesn't interfere with the scoring there. And then my character still shoots, but the bullets still don't do anything. However, when the character gets hit by the centipede, which hopefully will happen here in a minute, I lose a life. So now notice I have 2 lives left. Again, the bullets don't do anything, but if I get up here and have the centipede collide with me, oh, you're kidding, it's going to miss this time. We're making the video a lot longer, but I want to show you the game over slide, so bear with me. I'll make it happen as soon as I can here. Okay, there's the second one. We have 1 life remaining. We'll shoot some bullets that do nothing just to fill the time, and I guess I should have made the centipede go faster. But I'm going to slide over here, and once I get hit, you'll see that we'll go to a game over screen because we'll have 0 lives left. Okay, so then I come to a game over screen. We have no score because we haven't achieved any points yet because our bullets haven't hit anything. But this is the idea. At the end of part 3, this is what we had, simply a character that shoots bullets. Okay, so let's get into the code here, and the first thing we'll do is simply add that output to the top of the screen with our lives, our level, and our score. And that will happen in the game playing scene. So I'm in the game.js file that we had created, and after we do the bullet delay, we'll go ahead and display this. The fill color that I selected is that fancy blue, and of course this thing keeps wanting to write file list. Come on, man. How hard is it to put the word fill? Okay. We're going to fill with 0, 70, 250. That's that special version of blue that I had there, which I just pulled out of my hat. And then we want to put the text on the screen. So the first thing I had displayed there was the score. And we're going to introduce a variable called game score to keep track of that. So I'll go add that as a global in a second. Then I displayed the level, which I had scooted over with some spaces. I can't remember exactly how many. We'll put this in and we'll see how that looks. Plus the level that we're on. Oops. And then let's just go down on this last line here. And then the last thing we're going to do is put the lives. Again, we'll put some spaces in. I should have counted this out, but we'll even that out a little later. And the lives, we're going to add a property to the player called lives. So we'll have to do that in our player. And then we're going to place this text up at the top, and I want it to center on the screen. So since we already set the text align feature to center, I just need to send it the x coordinate of width over 2, and then our y coordinate, we're going to drop it down to 20. And that should take care of displaying that score on the screen. However, we still got to get these variables put in. So right now, I do not have a game score variable. So let's add a global here. called game score, and I'll assign it an initial value of 0 because we haven't scored any points yet. The other thing you'll notice that we did is we added a property to our player called lives. So I have to go into my player.js file and set that property. So usually we get 3 lives, kind of like that's the standard. But if we ever want to change that, I don't want people to have to search for that. So I'm going to just make a global called max lives, and we'll go back to our game.js and we'll set that constant to 3 for now. And if we ever want to change it later, we can change it. So we'll just set a constant max lives, and for now we'll make that 3. Okay, so max lives takes care of that. We've assigned our player max lives. I want to go back to my text output and make sure we haven't introduced any other variables that we haven't declared yet. Everything else looks good. I've got level in here already because we've used that in the previous video. So I think now if we go to our browser here and refresh, we should see that information at the top of the screen. And of course we don't. Guess what? There must be an error. Let's quickly go to the console and figure out what happened. Player, something to do with parentheses in game on line 68. It happens. You probably noticed it already. So let's go back down here and find out what happened with my commas. Right here, after we set that string, we have to put a plus sign because we want player lives to show up on the canvas as part of the text, then the width and the height. So that's, or the width and the distance. So that should be good. Let's try it now. Sorry about that. There it is. Okay, so that font looks very small. Let's reset the font. And I think we want to set that to 20. So let's do that. And I'm going to do that right after the text align. So back up in the setup, I set the text align. Let's go ahead and set the text size. And I'm going to set that to 20. If we don't like that, we can change it later. Let's refresh this. See how that looks? That looks decent. You may even want to go a little bit bigger, but I'm going to stick with 20. Now notice when my Centipede first regenerates, it runs right through my score. And I want to make it drop down into that second line. So in our regenerate function for our Centipede, let's set that Y value to a little bit lower down the page. Right now we have it set to this dot size plus 1. And I think what I'm going to do is instead of this dot size plus 1, I'm going to double it. So I'm going to do 2 times this dot size. And I don't really need the plus 1 on there anymore, I don't think, because that should do it. So let's save this, and let's just see how that looks when we regenerate and refresh. Okay, so now we're running right below our score output there. And for now, I think I'm happy with that. So we've got that going. We still have a gun that shoots. Now notice the bullets are coming out kind of the side of my body instead of the tip of my little gun there. And that was a mistake, not a mistake, but a miscalculation that I made when I originally set the location for the bullets. So I'm going to go to my player.js. Let's see, where did I do the shoot? Yeah, bullets.shoot. Instead of sending it from this .x and this .y, which is the center of my player, I want to back this up. So I'm going to go to the information where I drew my rectangle, and I'm going to actually copy this value right here. This .y minus this .size over 2 minus 5, that is where the tip of my gun is located. So let's go ahead and change this y value for the bullets.shoot to that same calculation, and I believe that'll make the bullets come out of the tip of the gun, which is a little more in line with what's supposed to happen. So I'm going to hit refresh here. And let's just, yeah, see now even when I move around, they're coming right out of the tip of the gun. That's where the bullets should be coming out of. So that part's working. Okay, we've got the information at the top of the screen and we've got the bullets adjusted. Now what we want to do is we want to implement a collision so that we can start losing lives for our player. And the way that happens is when the centipede hits the player. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we can implement this. I'm going to implement it from the perspective of the player. So I'm going to have the player check to see if it's collided with the centipede. So I'm going to put in a method in player.js here called check collide. So this dot check collide. And that's going to be a function. And it needs to receive the thing that we're trying to check for the collision on. So I'm going to call that the centipede. All right. We're going to check to see if we've collided with a centipede. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, we first need to make sure we're checking a collision for each of the nodes in the centipede, right? So I need a for loop. And my counter variable, I'm going to use C, and I'll run through the length of the body. So that's centipede dot body dot length. And we'll just increment by 1. So C, oops, lowercase c++. Okay, in this loop, I want to check the distance between my player's center and the center of the node. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate that first, just in sort and letter D here, variable D. I'm going to use the dist function, which is built into p5.js. I want to check the difference between this dot x comma this dot y, which is my player, and the centipede. I just moved it down there so I could fit it all in the nice part of the screen. Let me scoot this up so you can see it in the video. Centipede dot body dot c, because that's the node that we're looking at, dot x, and then we want to check the same thing and change it to y. So I'm just going to copy and paste this, change that to y. Okay, so we're checking the distance between those, and then if that distance is less than the two radii added together, then we have a collision. So if d is less than this dot size over 2, plus this, not this, plus centipede dot body bracket c dot size over 2. Over 2, sir. Okay. Now, if that happens, we need to reduce the number of lives that the player has. So this dot lives minus minus. I also want to reset this dot lives. Darn it. I also want to reset the position of the player. So I want him to drop back down to the bottom again. So I'm going to set this dot y back to the height times 3.75. I think that's where we started in before. You can always change that later if you'd like them to start lower. And then this dot x we're going to set back to the center. Okay. Now, since we're resetting where the player is, let's also regenerate the centipede back to the top. And we'll set it at the same speed that that centipede already had. Centipede, come on man, spell this right. Dot speed. Okay. So in our version of the game, if the centipede hits the player goes back to the bottom and the centipede starts back up again at the top. It regenerates itself. Just double checking to make sure I don't have any typos. I'm sure we'll find them when I run this. So that's good. We're checking for that. Now in the game, we have to call that function. So in our game playing scene, we're going to throw that check collide in after we update our bullets. So I'm in game. I'm going to scroll down here. So in the game playing scene, we've done our bullet delay reduction. Before we display the score, let's go ahead and see what's going on with the player. So we'll check collide. We'll send it our centipede. Oops, that's not what I wanted. And then we need to check our number of lives. If player.lives is less than 1, in other words, we've hit 0, I want to switch scenes. The game is over, and I want to switch to what we're going to call game over scene. So we'll set current scene to a constant game over. Okay. Now, we don't have a constant game over, so let's go up to the top of our code here and add a constant. We already have a playing game equal to. Let's call game over scene 3. So now we have the constant. And then since we're going to have current scene equal game over, we need to add that to our switch. So that'll be another case. Case, game over. And I need to call game over scene, which we'll need to write. Oops, let's spell it in camel case here. And then I'll break. Okay, so we're going to call game over scene. That means we have to go up and write game over scene. So we'll put that underneath our game playing scene. So we'll add that right here. Function game over scene. And that does not need to receive any parameters. We're just going to display our game over scene. So let's erase the background. And we'll just set it to black. Okay, so we're going to go with the black background. I'm going to set the text size a little bit bigger. I'm going to try 40 to start with, and we'll see if we need to adjust that later. And then we basically just want to tell them, hey, the game's over. I'm going to do that in all caps. Game over. And I'm going to put that in the center because we've got text align on. But I want to put that in the top third of the canvas. And then I'll display the score also. So we'll show the player what they scored in the game. And we'll put that in the center, but we'll move that down to the bottom third. So 2/3 of the way down. Okay. Well, if everything is going according to plan here, when I bring it up, we'll be done. I'm crossing my fingers. This is shorter than the last video. Okay, so let's try this. The thing is, we got to let it run to see if it works. Oh, of course. First of all, let's get the old console up. Player line 50, I've got an issue. Oh, yeah, I used a comma instead of a semicolon, so be careful with that. Let's save that. And then what was the other issue? Oh, yeah, so I think that was the only problem. Let's refresh again and see what happens. Still an error. My console's gone. Player line 57. What's going on there? Equals. Jeepers creepers. Typos left and right. It's like that first video I did. I'm going to put a space right here too. All right. We'll find out if I have any other issues. There we go. Okay. So we're still shooting. It's coming out the top. Let's get up here and see if this thing will kill me. Yeah, I should have sped this up. For the video purposes, this is not a fun thing to watch. Oh, man. Look what happened. I've got, so my regenerate started a new Centipede. That is so weird. I did not have. So everything works except I got to get rid of the old centipede before I regenerate a new centipede. So let me see where I did that. My guess is I got to go into my centipede regenerate function and add something there. I do not see it there. That is so weird. Probably going to have to stop the video and figure out what's going on. I was looking at my other code. So let's see what's going on here. This is where we check for the collision. This is where we regenerate. So I want to look at my regenerate function and see what's happening here. That is so interesting. I need to delete the old one before I start a new one. And I did it in the other code that you're looking at in the beginning of the video. I didn't do it here. All right, I'm pausing because I'm wasting your time, and then we'll get this figured out. And the problem has to do with my regenerate function. And it's because I wrote the regenerate function slightly differently in my other code. So you'll notice here I'm using push in line 65 when I regenerate. And the problem with this is that I never get rid of the old body parts that were already there. Now, the way I wrote it, I didn't use push. I just started back with body bracket C. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do something different. I'm going to clear out this dot body. And I'll reset it to an empty array, and then we'll push all the new nodes back on. Okay, so that should take care of it. Let's check it now. We'll refresh here. And of course, you got to sit and watch this guy get hit by the centipede. Terrible way to test this out. But this is what you're stuck with. Okay, he's going to get me, and then after I crash and burn, I will go to the bottom, and the centipede starts over. So we're good. Okay, so just wanted to make sure that we fix that. Everything else is working fine. We go to our game over scene. You can change the colors if you want. I kept the blue, but that's the deal for this video. So just to be clear, we implemented, we had it display the score in our game playing scene, and we also implemented collisions through the eyes of the player. So check collide is a player method. And when the centipede collides with the player, we reduce the player lives by 1. If the player has no lives left, we switch to game over scene. So remember, we had to adjust our switch and our draw method to handle that. And we introduced some constants, of course, as part of that process. So that's the end of this particular part. The next thing we'll need to do so we can start scoring points is introduce our collisions between our bullets and our centipede. So that's up in part 5. For now, get this one working, and if you need me, you know where to find me. Take care.